Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Saira Mujtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar speaks to the Foreign Minister of UAE, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, on phone, conveys India's solidarity with UAE against terrorism. UAE expresses condolences for Indian lives lost in terror attacks. Benchmark oil prices climbed to highest level since 2014 in the wake of a possible disruption in supplies after the attacks in West Asia. In Afghanistan, 26 people killed in earthquake. 10 biggest US airlines warn that the 5G mobile phone services may cause major disruption to flights. In Tonga, 3 people killed and all homes on a small island destroyed by massive volcanic eruption and tsunami. And in Australian Open tennis, star players Andy Murray and Daniil Medvedev sail into second round. As the number of COVID-19 cases are rising fast in several parts of the country, we appeal to our listeners to be vigilant and get fully vaccinated and help others, including children between 15 and 18 years, to get vaccinated. As the new Omicron variant of coronavirus is causing concern, please continue to follow the 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Tuesday had a telephonic conversation with the Foreign Minister of UAE, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan. They discussed the terror attack on UAE yesterday that killed 2 Indian nationals. The UAE Foreign Minister shared the details of the attack. He conveyed the deepest condolences of the UAE government on the death of the 2 Indians. He assured that the UAE government would extend the fullest support to the families of the deceased. His authorities are in continuous touch with the Indian Embassy in that regard. Dr. Jaishankar condemned the terror attack in the strongest of terms. He emphasized that such an attack on innocent civilians was completely unacceptable and against all civilized norms. He appreciated the immediate assistance provided by UAE authorities to the embassy in responding to this tragic situation. Dr. Jaishankar conveyed India's strong solidarity with UAE in the face of such an attack. Given its principled position against terrorism, he said India will stand with UAE in international forums on this issue. The Ministry of External Affairs is in contact with the Indian Embassy in Abu Dhabi regarding the return to India of the mortal remains of the deceased. The Embassy is coordinating with the families. They have also rendered all necessary assistance to those who sustained injuries. Benchmark oil prices climbed to their highest level since 2014 on Tuesday as possible supply disruption after attacks in West Asia Gulf added to an already tight supply outlook. Brent crude futures rose $0.88 or 1% to $87.36 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures jumped $1.23 or 1.5% to $85.05 a barrel. Trade on Monday was subdued as it was a U.S. public holiday. Both benchmarks touched their highest level since October 2014 earlier in Tuesday's session. Supply concerns have risen this week after Yemen's Houthi group attacked the United Arab Emirates, escalating hostilities between the Iran-aligned group and Saudi Arabian-led coalition. In addition, some producers within the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries are struggling to pump at their allowed capacities due to underinvestment and outages, under an agreement with Russia and allies to add 400,000 barrels per day each month. Goldman Sachs analysts say they expected oil inventories in OECD countries to fall to their lowest since 2000 by the summer, with Brent oil prices rising to $100 later this year.
India will host 5 events in 2022, including BRICS Startups Forum meeting, working groups meetings on energy and biotechnology and biomedicine. The 15th meeting of the BRICS Science Technology Innovation Steering Committee was held virtually on Monday. During the meeting, the calendar of BRICS STI activities and expected deliverables were discussed. India has successfully handed over the BRICS chairmanship to China this month. The theme for BRICS 2022 is Foster High-Quality BRICS Partnership, Usher in a New Era for Global Development. A series of sectoral events and meetings, including ministerial level and BRICS Summit, will be organized during the year. Indian Minister of State for Science and Technology Dr. Jitendra Singh has called for closer collaboration between India and United Kingdom on issues of mutual concern like achieving the goals of food security and zero hunger. He was virtually addressing the joint India-UK meet on sustaining food production under environmental stress in New Delhi on Tuesday. Dr. Singh said India and UK must invite global collaborations in various dimensions of science like agriculture, medicine, food, pharma, engineering and defense. He said this joint collaboration may include programs like students exchange, basic research, technology development, product development, as well as product and process demonstration and their implementation in it. The minister also suggested evolving important key areas in agriculture, food and nutrition to be taken up by the two countries for a joint research plan. This virtual meet is being jointly organized by National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institute in Mohali and University of Birmingham, UK, and supported by Newton Bhabha Fund and the British Council.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to his Greece counterpart Nikos Dendias on Tuesday. They discussed taking the agenda forward in trade and investment, defense, mobility and consular matters. India's Department of Telecom has issued the revised terms and conditions for issue and renewal of NOC for sale and rent of international roaming SIM cards and global calling cards of foreign operators in India. The revised terms and conditions have been finalized after the recommendations of Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. The revised terms will strengthen the mechanism to protect the interests of the Indian public visiting abroad. The revised policy mandates the NOC holders to make provision for providing information about customer care service, contact details, itemized bills, information related to tariff plans and offered services. Consumer grievance redressal mechanism has also been strengthened.
In today's Hotspot section, we have a discussion on PM's message at the World Economic Forum in Davos, India and global supply chains. The participants are Sharat Kohli, economic analyst, and Ruchika Chitravanshi, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday addressed the World Economic Forum's Davos agenda through a video conference speech. And in his speech, he has talked about a lot of pressing issues, whether it be COVID or climate change or cryptocurrency and reforms. And he has talked a lot about how India is a very good investment destination and what all the government is doing for the ease of doing business. A lot of these things that PM has touched upon. Mr. Kohli, what was your biggest takeaway? And also, if you can put some context to the time at which Mr. Modi's address is coming, because global economy is reeling under pressure. We are still not out of the pandemic. What is the significance of some of the things that the Prime Minister said in his address?
The biggest takeaway for me is the long-term vision with India as an investment destination, which the Prime Minister has shown. So I think this is the time when the world, as you rightly said, is going through a very tough time. Pandemic has spread through the world and it has been 2 years now, and the consequences have been devastating, not just for human life, health, but direct collateral, I would say, is the economy. And I think this is the time when all countries around the world are trying to find ways and means as to how to overcome, how to get past this whole problem, and how to economically survive and thrive. So I think India has shown that spirit, unleashing that spirit, I would say, where I remember in 2020 when Prime Minister said that making an opportunity out of the crisis. So I think that is what the Prime Minister's speech was aimed at, that there is crisis, but let us try and make the best out of the situation that we are in. There's nothing much we can do about it as far as the health crisis is concerned. I mean, vaccines are there, hospitalization is there, whatever best is being done. I mean, there's nothing much which the governments can do beyond what is being done right now. But what can definitely be done is that you can try and make it as an opportunity and try and reshape your economy. And in 2020, when this pandemic came, the announcement of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan was the first step. And I think Prime Minister has glorified, has emphasized on the self-reliance, as he called it in Davos. So I think the self-reliance was the focus. Long-term vision was the focus. India is a 25-year forward vision that people should look at. Because see, any investment, Ruchika, when it comes to a country, you always give it a long-term perspective. No investor wants to invest in a country which is unstable, which has got a short-term vision, a country which doesn't show you a direction in the longer term. So I think Prime Minister emphasizing on the 25 years vision, I think was the key. And any investor should get comfort and should feel good about the fact that whatever money they pump in, whatever form they bring in the investment, I think 25 years vision is a huge comfort for any investor.
One of the big headlines that has come from PM's address is that he said that this is the best time to invest in India. And as you rightly said, that obviously he's talked about following the path of self-reliance. But he said at the same time, we are also working on incentivizing investment and production. He's talked about the PLI schemes that have been implemented in 14 sectors. As an economic expert, do you see it as indicative or as a sign of things to come that will India do more to invite foreign investment into the country? Do you see more steps being taken towards this direction given what PM has said at a global platform?
Ever since the pandemic struck in March 2020, although the government was already in a reform mode from the time it took over in 2014, but ever after the pandemic, I think this whole process was speeded up. And be it Atmanirbhar or be it any other agenda which was taken up at that time, I think converting the crisis into opportunity became kind of a motto of the government, and reforms was an outcome of that. It was also an outcome. It was also a cause. It was also a reason. You can call it whatever. But I think reforms have been forthcoming. They have been brought in one after the other. I mean, if we start counting reforms, we can probably burn away rest of the time in discussing only the reforms. But I personally feel that reform is the only way for this country to go forward. If this country wants to become a developed world from a developing world, I think it will have to go for reform, undoubtedly. And I think the government is quite committed to that. And we can see in the times to come, we have a budget coming on 1st of February. Well, people are looking forward to that budget because budget is again coming at a time when country is going through the pandemic. So I think reform is the way forward. And this is again gives a lot of comfort to the investors because a country which is, whether it is labor reforms, whether they are land reforms, whether they are ease of doing business, whether it is currency related reforms, whether it is trade related reforms, I think whether it is taxation related reforms, I think the list of reforms, as I said, is endless. But then for an investor, if I'm an investor for that matter, I would get a lot of comfort in the fact that the country is in a reform mode. And if my investment for any reason is facing a challenge or I've got a problem in some sector, dealing with some government department, fulfilling a process, I think I would feel relaxed the moment I find that government is in reform mode. The government wants to attract investment, and any government for that matter which wants to attract investment has to be in the reform mode and has to bring about reform, which is what the government of India is doing.
Very interesting. You also touched upon the upcoming budget because the Prime Minister has talked about reducing our corporate tax rate to make the businesses more competitive and promoting the ease of doing business. But a lot of other important things that he has talked about, and if we talk in context of the COP summit as well, he has said that India constitutes 70% of global population but takes a power commission of only 5%. And its effort for sustainable development is 100%. Can you tell us a little bit about what PM has talked about and what is India's position, especially with the commitment of the net zero target by 2070, when India's growth will be clean, green, sustainable, reliable, and all?
When India announced 2070 as the target, I think it took the world by surprise, and a pleasant surprise for that matter. Because for India, having made that promise, that because it's not easy to be carbon free, to have zero carbon emissions, I think it is some of the best countries around the world, some of the most developed countries around the world, did not have the courage to make a commitment of that sort. So with this kind of statement coming from India, I think it was a very welcome news for the world. And the world, I think it made a very positive impact on the world as far as India is concerned, that a country which has got almost 1.4 billion people and which is still primarily at this point of time dependent on coal and some of the other fossil fuels and customary energy sources, is making a commitment. And I think the government has already moved in that direction. I have a feeling that we should be able to achieve this goal. The speed at which the government is putting forth those reforms and taking decisions in that regard, whether it is green energy, whether it is anything related to climate, I think we can easily achieve that objective at least 10 to 15 years before 2070. So I would say that 2070 seems to be the outer limit, but the speed at which the government has committed itself to the reforms related to climate change, related to carbon emissions. Look at what is happening in the world of automobiles for that matter, where we use petrol and diesel. The speed at which the electrification of vehicles is happening. I think in the next 5 years, you will probably see half the vehicles on the road running on battery. So I think which is going to be a huge positive impact on the environment. So I think India has got a very, very achievable target, and I have a feeling that we will achieve this sooner than what has been committed. Another aspect, Ruchika, which I would like to touch, which Prime Minister said during the Davos address, was about the pharma industry. I think with India being the third largest pharmaceutical manufacturing base, I think it showed the commitment of the country. Well, not many people knew that India is such a big pharma producer until the pandemic came. Of course, the people who study, people who are experts, people who follow the sectors, they knew. But I think Aam Janata did not know that India is such a big pharma supplier. So third largest pharma producer in the world, having saved millions and millions of lives around the world and supplying pharmaceuticals at prices which are unmatched and the quality which is unmatched. So I think India's supremacy, India's comprehensive leadership in the world of pharmacy has been re-established, has been restored. And I think the world is now looking at India to not just for communal harmony, not just for brotherhood. The world is looking at India for health reasons as well. I think which is a huge takeaway from the speech. And I have a feeling, and there was one more aspect which I thought Prime Minister did touch upon a little bit, but maybe not, but which is India becoming world's biggest defense supplier. We can see manufacturing on the defense products is going to shoot up like anything. And from a time when we used to import defense equipment, we are going to become exporters. And we've already started receiving orders from the third world countries where some of our missiles like BrahMos and all that are being welcomed and they've been greatly appreciated around the world. So I think India's self-reliance, India's giving away dependence on so many things was the focus of the Prime Minister. And of course, inviting investments from the world that this is the right time for you to invest, because soon after this pandemic settles down, Ruchika, I can tell you with conviction that India is going to be the fastest developing economy in the world for many, many years to come. No other economy, including China, I can say it with a great confidence because we just heard China GDP numbers. They have slowed down. In China, pandemic is just beginning to pick up again. So in the next few years, I think India will throw behind China and other developing economies to become world leader. And that is when the whole world is going to look at India.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kohli, for joining us.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Welcome back to World News. In Afghanistan, at least 26 people were killed after an earthquake hit the western part of the country on Monday. Rescue workers on Tuesday searched for survivors. Badghis province spokesperson Baz Mohammad Sarwari told news agencies that Qadis district of the province badly affected by the earthquake. He said that the earthquake caused massive damage to houses. About 700 to 1,000 have been damaged. Some of the victims, including women and children, died when the roofs of their houses collapsed, officials said. The spokesperson said that there is the possibility that the casualties could increase. The quake also inflicted damage on the residents of Mokr district, but details including casualties were still unavailable. According to the US Geological Survey, the earthquake was of 5.3 magnitude on the Richter scale. In Tonga, 3 people have been killed while all the homes on one of its smaller outer islands have been destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption and tsunami, the government said on Tuesday. In its first update since the disaster struck, Office of Prime Minister Siyaosi Sovaleni said in a statement that every home on Mango Island, where around 50 people live, had been destroyed. Only 2 houses remained on Fonoifua and Namuka Island had suffered extensive damage. Sovaleni's office said a 65-year-old woman on Mango Island and a 49-year-old man on Namuka Island had been killed, in addition to the British national whose body was found on Monday. A number of injuries were also reported. Tongan Navy has deployed with health teams and water, food and tents to Hapai Islands, with more aid sent on Tuesday, the Prime Minister's office said. Tonga is expected to issue formal requests for aid soon, but in the meantime, New Zealand said 2 ships, HMNZS Wellington and HMNZS Aotearoa, had set off with water supplies, survey teams and helicopter. UN teams are on standby, the OCHA said.
As many as 10 biggest US airlines have warned that the impending switch on of 5G mobile phone services will cause major disruption to flights. They said the start of Verizon and AT&T 5G mobile phone services planned for Wednesday would cause a completely avoidable economic calamity. Airlines fear C-band 5G signals will disrupt planes' navigation systems, particularly those used in bad weather. The warning was issued in a letter sent to U.S. aviation authorities. The chief executives of American Airlines, Delta Airlines and United Airlines were joined by others in saying that urgent intervention is needed to avoid significant operational disruption to air passengers, shippers, supply chain and delivery of needed medical supplies. Some concerns were recently highlighted by the 2 big plane makers, Airbus and Boeing. In an update on Sunday, Federal Aviation Administration, which oversees aviation safety across the U.S., said it had cleared an estimated 45% of the U.S. commercial fleet to perform low visibility landings at many of the airports where 5G C-band will be deployed. Phone companies have spent tens of billions of dollars on upgrading their networks to deploy the 5G technology, which brings much faster internet services and greater connectivity. U.S. Wireless Industry Group CTIA has previously said 5G is safe and accused the aviation industry of fear-mongering and distorting facts. Mozambique military forces have said that they have arrested a militant leader, a Tanzanian citizen, in Nangare district in the northern Cabo Delgado province. Military officials say the 39-year-old leader, known as Ali, was captured alongside 6 other Islamic State group-linked insurgents. He is said to have been one of the militant leaders whose task was to recruit fighters and direct attacks. His capture comes amid a deteriorating security situation in the district, with a series of terrorist attacks in the recent days. In about 2 weeks, the insurgents have attacked 7 villages in Nangade.
And in sports news, in badminton, HS Pranoy began India's campaign on Tuesday with a victory in Syed Modi International Tournament in Lucknow. He defeated Ukraine's Danilo Boshnoik in straight games in the opening round 21-14, 21-18 in men's singles. In women's singles, Akarshi Kashyap beat Mugdha Agre 21-13, 21-14. 2-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu will face compatriot Tanya Hemant on Wednesday. In the Australian Open tennis, former world number 1 Andy Murray and favourite Daniil Medvedev advanced to the second round of the tournament. Andy Murray of Britain earned his first victory at the tournament in 5 years, overcoming 21st seed Nicolas Basilashvili 6-1, 3-6, 6-4, 6-7, 6-4 in the first round of men's singles in Melbourne. The 34-year-old's last appearance in Melbourne came in 2019 when he lost an emotional match against Roberto Bautista Agut in 5 sets. Russia's Daniil Medvedev registered a 6-1, 6-4, 7-6, 3 win over Henri Lacosonen of Switzerland in the first round at Melbourne Park. After Sunday's deportation of men's defending champion and top seed Novak Djokovic, the first Grand Slam of the year is now in full swing and eager to move on from the visa saga. In the women's draw, some of the top 10 players including second seed Aryna Sabalenka, third seed Garbine Muguruza, sixth seed Anett Kontaveit and 7th-seeded Iga Swiatek all made comfortable starts to their campaign and entered the second round.
The Beijing Winter Olympics Organizing Committee announced on Monday that tickets for the Beijing Winter Olympic Games will not be sold to the public and only selected spectators will be invited to attend on supervised trips. The announcement comes after Beijing reported its first case of the highly transmissible Omicron variant on 15th of January, less than 3 weeks before the Games opening on 4th of February. This makes Beijing the second consecutive Olympics after Tokyo, held largely without fans. China has said that priority will be to ensure safety of the Games, looking at the spread of the Omicron variant. Chinese President Xi Jinping, in his address at the 2022 World Economic Forum on Monday, said they are confident that China will present a streamlined, safe and splendid Games to the world. News on AIR Radio live stream global ranking measurement for listenership across age groups has revealed that more than one-third of the global listeners are in the age group of 18 to 44. This corroborates News on AIR app's huge popularity among the youth across the world. In the latest rankings of top countries in the world where All India Radio live streams on News on AIR app are most popular, Spain has entered top 10 for the first time ever. Fiji continues to remain at the top position for 2 consecutive fortnights, followed by Australia and the United States. Among the top All India radio streams globally, AIR Dharmshala is the new entrant. FM Gold Delhi is ranked first, followed by FM Rainbow Delhi. More than 240 radio services of All India Radio are live streamed on News and AIR app.
Now let us have a look at some important news covered by press on China. Caixin reported at least 9 Chinese cities, including the capital Beijing, have reportedly locally transmitted cases of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 since January 9th, with the southern city of Meizhou becoming the latest to detect the highly transmissible strain. Chinese official media has blamed the lone Omicron case in Beijing to an international mail delivered from Canada to Beijing via the US and the Hong Kong, as the Chinese capital was on alert ahead of next month's Winter Olympics. The single Omicron case detected in Beijing was traced back to an international document from Canada, and it was found to have similar strains from those in North America and Singapore. AP reports that according to a think tank Global Order, the Chinese Communist Party has employed many methods to eradicate Tibetan Buddhism not only within Tibet but also outside Tibet. It said that this continued persecution by China has curtailed the little space available for religious freedom. It is also contrary to the Chinese government's claim of religious freedom in Tibet. Now let us have a look at some important news covered by press on Nepal. ANI carried the headline, China fails in trade obligations with Nepal. The report said that China's non-adherence to the transport and transit agreement has let Nepal down in its trade relations with Beijing. It added that businessmen in Nepal are protesting against China at 2 main trading points, Rasuagdi and Tatopani at the Nepal-China border.
And now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The New York Times headlines, China's birds hit historic low, a political problem for Beijing. Washington Post notes that Hong Kong to kill 2,000 hamsters because of suspected animal-to-human coronavirus transmission. The Wall Street Journal writes that after volcano eruption, Tonga needs to bring in aid but keep out COVID-19. The Guardian reports, British Prime Minister Johnson has denied that he was warned number 10 event in May 2020 and it was against rules. He further said he did not lie to Parliament. Financial Times reports, Omicron drives record cases of child COVID hospitalization. South China Morning Post says, Canadian authorities respond to Beijing CDC's claim that a contaminated letter from Toronto could be the source of an Omicron case in the Chinese capital. And the Japan Times writes, Japan reports over 30,000 new COVID-19 cases, setting a record high.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar speaks to the Foreign Minister of UAE Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan on phone, conveys India's solidarity with UAE against terrorism. UAE expresses condolences for Indian lives lost in terror attack. Benchmark oil prices climbed to highest levels since 2014 in the wake of a possible disruption in supplies after the attacks in West Asia. In Afghanistan, 26 people killed in an earthquake. 10 biggest US airlines warn that the 5G mobile phone services may cause major disruption to flights. In Tonga, 3 people killed and all homes on a small island destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption and tsunami. And in Australian Open tennis, star players Andy Murray and Daniel Medvedev sail into second round. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Bhutan.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीर पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान ना आने रे सकल लोक मां सहोने.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.